That I early on in my studies realized that black holes are not just absorbing material, but they're radiating material, because actually our own solar system is moving away from an immense black hole at the center of the galaxy. And if we wound the time backwards, we'd get back into the black hole, right? So we're actually moving away from it, and what happens is that because the structure of the space-time manifold of a black hole is a double torus, and that's why the galaxy is in a double torus structure with an equator, which is where all the matter can get stuck in between the two toruses. Well, as we're moving out of this huge vorticular arm, the solar system is going below and back above and below and back above and below, and we are at this time crossing the equator of our galaxy. And I figured this out. It was just recently confirmed by papers that were published at Oxford. And they noticed as well that every time we crossed the equator in the past, there was cataclysmic effects. And so, you know, I figured it out because if you look at the Milky Way in the night sky, it's almost in the middle, and the Milky Way is the equator of our galaxy. That's why it's so dense. And so what happens is when you're at the equator, there's more debris, there's more dust, there's more radiation coming from the galactic black hole because a manifold of space-time is pinched there, particles are accelerated, it's called galactic cosmic rays, and that has an effect on our sun. And our sun has been in this last cycle. So now the long count Mayan calendar, the short count, was mapping the 11-year cycle of the sun, and it was extremely precise. The long count is mapping the longer cycle, which is the sun going across the equator of the galaxy. And so it's not 2012 as a date, it's 2012 region, right? So we're in it right now. So there's been an increase of activity on the sun, then all of a sudden an abrupt decrease, the sun got really, really cold, and now we're starting to get, because we're passing from one torus to the other. When we enter the new torus, it's going to be really dense there again, and now we're going to get a lot of activity again. And that activity creates a lot of heat in our solar system, and because we're polluting, now all the planets are heating up, but because we're polluting, then that heat on our planet gets even more trapped. And so it's a combination, compounding each other, that's producing this meltdown on our planet. But this is crucial to our evolution. This is how beautiful the organization of the vacuum is. This is perfectly coordinated so that we would be just at the right moment in our consciousness evolution, so that we would need that little kick in the butt at this exact time to force a society to go galactic, right? And that's where we're going. Because if we don't go galactic now, we're just not going to make it. We're not. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the structure of the vacuum that you talk about, discovering this relationship of the cube octahedron or vector equilibrium and the star tetrahedron, I'm very, very interested in trying to understand that, which is why I actually made a model of it, which people can look at themselves in the back of the room. But I'd like to know if you could talk a little bit about what it actually is, like what form, like what is it made of? If it's vacuum, it's made of nothing. I understand it conceptually as a conceptual structure, but I'd like to elaborate a little bit more beyond the short concept what the shape is.
All right. Yeah. Well, you know, you can imagine this. Okay. We think that there's something with nothing, but in fact, when we look in the universe, we find nowhere with nothing. Right? Everything we think is nothing is something, meaning even if you look at the densest or the lowest vacuum we can find, which is intergalactic vacuum, the space between galaxies, right?
Or the space between a neutron, between the electrons and the protons.
Right, we find there's fluctuations there, and we find that between galaxies there's still a particle every few centimeters, right? And so the fact is that there's fluctuations all the time, everywhere. Now imagine the surface of the ocean, okay? And imagine that the surface of the ocean, you know how it's chaotic like that? It's mostly chaotic. But then there's region where there's vortices, right? Where it's highly organized in that region of space. Now the vacuum, where it's really organized in that region of space, where that happens, you call it an atom. It's a little vortex in the structure of space. You see what I'm saying? And then if you looked at all the vortex put together, they all interact with each other, and they make that tapestry, which is the structure of the vacuum, the geometry of the vacuum, the interaction between all the vortices. You see it now?
But it's happening also below an atomic level.
Right, it's happening, it's like little vortices and big vortices all embedded in each other, so it's a little bit more complicated. It's like, you can imagine like little pinches in space-time at all different scales, all embedded into each other, and if you saw it all together, you would see that structure, that tapestry of space-time. Right? It's like all the rings interacting, triangulating, they're going to make tetrahedrons. That's the only way they can organize in the most efficient and in the most equilibrium way. So they're going to reduce to that fundamental geometry. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what happened to us is that we thought that the vortex is the whole thing, and we missed the water that makes the vortex. Right? It's like the vacuum is the pool of water, and we see a vortex in it, we see a little eddy in it, we go, oh, there's something over there, and we don't know that it's the water, it's the space itself that produces that little effect. And that's what we're discovering. Go ahead.
But what you're saying is that this isn't just some metaphysical exercise where you're saying consciousness is a source of life.
Right.
Real.
Right. Well, when you say consciousness is a source of life, that's all great and philosophical, but what the heck is consciousness, right?
Well, that's the point.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Now I can write the math to what is consciousness. Consciousness is self-awareness. Self-awareness means that there's a feedback. So through the information moving through the electromagnetic field and coming back through the gravitational field, you have consciousness, self-awareness. So I actually can write the mechanics of the math of why the universe is conscious. And so that's what is needed, because saying consciousness is fundamental to the universe doesn't tell you anything if you don't know what are the mechanics that produce that. Go ahead.
My question is,